Thanks for joining us here on MLSsoccer.com with Simon Borg. I'm Jason Segini, and today we are looking at the U.S. national team World Cup qualifier against Jamaica Friday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time on beIN Sport. And Simon, after the game Tuesday night that Jamaica had, they lost 1-0 to Mexico at home. They are a desperate team sitting at the bottom of the standings and looking up at everyone else in the group who has a game in hand on them.
Jason, there was a lot of debate. What result in that Tuesday game would be best for the U.S.? A Jamaica win, a draw, a loss? I think a loss is the worst case scenario because Jamaica backs against the wall. The media's on top of them. The fans have a lot of pressure on them now. And Jamaica, they're going to have to change their lineup from the game against Mexico because the back line, I mean, it's makeshift. They had a couple of errors, debutants on the at fullback. And then in the attack, just anemic Ryan Johnson of the Portland Timbers all alone up top. I expect them to go two forwards against the U.S.
All right, last time the U.S. went down to Jamaica in a World Cup qualifier, they actually lost 2-1. So, Simon, what is going to have to happen differently this time for the U.S. to get 3 points or at least a point?
Well, if you remember from that game, the biggest criticisms first were the U.S. never able to get into a rhythm. Part of that was Jamaica's physical style. The other thing was the field and the conditions of the field. It looked in great shape against Mexico on Tuesday night, so that shouldn't be an issue. The other issue for the U.S., remember, was they were not getting enough wide play. They kept coming inside, forcing the issue inside. That's going to have to change. If you watch the Mexico game, Mexico did it out wide. Jamaica let them have the wings. That's how Mexico got their goal. That's how the U.S. has to be dangerous on Friday.
And also, it's very interesting how you see World Cup qualifying progress. Last time they went down to Jamaica, they had a completely different back line from the back line we expect to see. Brad Evans on the right, DeMarcus Beasley on the left with Omar Gonzalez and Matt Beasler in the middle. None of those guys started that last game in Jamaica. Speaking of in Jamaica, our own Charlie Boehm is down in Kingston for this game, and he filed this report.
Thanks, guys. Greetings from the Anthony Spalding Sports Complex in the Trenchtown district of Kingston, where the United States national team are taking in their second training session since arriving here from Washington, D.C. on Tuesday afternoon. Coach Jurgen Klinsmann has 25 players at his disposal for Friday's World Cup qualifier at the Jamaica National Stadium, with the only injury concerns being Fabian Johnson and Herculez Gomez. Herculez Gomez is listed as day-to-day, while Johnson is expected to be available for the match. Klinsmann was made available to the traveling media for the first time on Wednesday afternoon. He underlined the United States' desire to overcome last year's upset loss here in Kingston and called it a unique opportunity to get 3 points on Friday. Said Klinsmann, these World Cup qualifiers are all about zooming in and getting things done. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Charlie. Well, Simon, U.S. coming off this big victory over Germany in Washington, D.C. Tell me, is there anything that you think you can pull from that game that will help them going into this Jamaica game?
Well, Jason, I think for the most part, you can throw the Germany game out the window. It's going to be completely different at the office. But there were some combination plays there by the U.S., getting the ball out wide and opening the field, especially with DeMarcus Beasley out left. So I think that is going to pay dividends for the U.S. against Jamaica.
All right, for some more on what the U.S. can take from this Germany game, let's head out west, where Dan Hayek and Matt Doyle have the scouting report.
Thanks, guys. Matt, while Jamaica comes into this one following a tough 1-0 loss at home against Mexico, the U.S.'s most recent result was a 4-3 win against Germany. We don't get 3 points for that one, of course, as it was a friendly, but there are lessons to be learned. What can we take from that game heading into Jamaica?
The big one is, as Jermaine Jones and Michael Bradley go, so goes the U.S. I think this was the best game the two of them have ever played together for the U.S. And Jones, it was his best game as an individual and his fourth really, really good game in a row. They were able to dominate the German midfield. They won more balls. They were very, very careful in possession without being hesitant. And Jones's ability to switch the field of play and bring the wide players in it, Graham Zusi on one side, Fabian Johnson, then Brad Davis on the other side. It was really something else. And here's the big one. It allowed Josie Altidore to stretch the field, to move away from the ball into space rather than checking back into the midfield and have to play as really a target or a hold-up forward. He was able to create gaps for himself and for Clint Dempsey. If they do that again, the U.S. stands a really, really good chance of getting 3 points from this one.
All right, well, hopefully Josie can recapture that same kind of game against Jamaica. But for now, let's kick it over to Greg Lawless with a special Anatomy of a Goal.
Jamaican forward Ryan Johnson is known for his hold-up play. But he's also very adept at getting on the end of crosses, like he did earlier this year for the Portland Timbers against the Montreal Impact. Let's wind it back and break it down. Johnson is a classic target man. He's constantly checking back to the ball. On this play, he checks back, collects the entry pass from Diego Chara, and lays it off. On Friday night, when Johnson has his back to goal, the U.S. defenders must apply more pressure than Montreal does here. But when he starts drifting toward goal, Johnson is equally dangerous. See how he finds the seam between defenders Alessandro Nesta and Hassoun Kamara when Ben Zimanski crosses the ball in. And though the finish might seem simple, there's actually more to it. Before the cross arrives, Johnson uses his body to hold Kamara off and finish the play. Recently, the U.S. backline has struggled with crosses on occasion, and if they do against Jamaica, Johnson is sure to make them pay.
Thanks, Greg. This game again, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time on beIN Sport Friday night. Simon, before we go, what kind of game are you expecting tomorrow night?
Well, Jason, I think Jamaica is going to make this a slugfest. They're going to make sure it's physical. There are fouls all over the field, and I think the U.S. backline is going to be critical. First, on defending set pieces. Mexico had some issues. Jamaica created some very good chances against them on Tuesday night via the set piece. And then the fullbacks. The new fullbacks for this game, DeMarcus Beasley, Brad Evans. Can they get into the attack often enough to give the U.S. the wide play, which for me is key?
All right, again, don't miss it, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time on beIN Sport, U.S. against Jamaica in World Cup qualifying.